Good morning. Nothing like a 7 o'clock cold start on a Sunday. Sure, my neighbors love me. Sorry, neighbors. Time for everybody to wake up. Running slightly late as usual. Anyone who knows me knows I usually run late. I don't know why. It just always ends up that way. I'm just always late. But yeah, this first half of the ride today, I actually wanted to talk about how I learned to ride. How I ended up on this R1M, which is probably not as long of a story as you would think. Oh man, look at this. So nice. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. So yeah, since I was a kid, I always loved motorcycles, loved cars. Had a couple cool cars that I built and all that, but I always wanted to ride. That was always my thing. I mean, like a lot of people, the R6 was my dream bike as a kid. And that was the bike that I always wanted. When I thought of a sport bike, I thought of an R6. I'm talking about the 2006 and up body style. Super aggressive styling. I mean, those things, they still look cool. I mean, to this day in 2023, 2006 R6 still looks amazing. So that was my dream bike, and I think I was just out of high school. And I had the idea of trying to go and finance one behind my parents' back. So I went to a dealership, got pricing, all that. I tried to fill out an application for financing. Obviously got declined because I had no credit. So then I went to me trying to find a co-signer. Things got messy from there. I put a down payment on an R6. Long story short, it did not work out. I did not end up with that R6. Probably for the best too. That would have been my very first bike. I would have been 19 with an R6. I mean, that just would have been way too much bike for me, especially that time in my life. So I'm actually glad it didn't work out at that time. Then years go on. I start working out of college. I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's time for that R6. So in the market for an R6 again. Looking around, I mean, pricing is just kind of crazy. I mean, this was before COVID, but it was after they discontinued the street versions of the R6. So people were hanging on to them, trying to sell them for, I mean, in some cases more than they paid for it brand new. So then I was like, yeah, maybe not. And I remember this Facebook post that I saw of this super cool looking cruiser, right? And I remembered it being an Indian, so I'm like, oh, let's search Indian. So I searched Indian, the brand, I had no idea which bike it was. I started searching their lineup for one that looked like the picture I saw on Facebook or whatever. And then landed on the Bobber, and I was like, ooh, this is cool. I mean, the price was right. I think brand new was like 12 grand at that time. I know they're more expensive now. So I started researching the Bobber, looking up videos of it. And slowly but surely, you know how it goes. You start looking up videos and start becoming obsessed with it. The idea of having it. So So I was like, all right, you know what, bobber it is. So it's January, I don't even remember what year. This is probably 3 years ago now. Go to the dealership, they have a brand new one, order it. Week later, the thing shows up in my garage. So never test rode it. To this point in my life, I've still never even ridden a motorcycle. So thing shows up, guy who delivered it rode it into the garage for me, leaves it there, says good luck, ride safe. And then I go inside, I'm like, all right, well, I guess I better learn how to ride this thing. And mind you, at this point in my life too, none of my friends ride motorcycles or rode motorcycles. At that time I didn't know anybody who rode motorcycles. I just knew I wanted one, so I went and bought one, got it delivered, and I'm like, all right, now what? So I pull up YouTube and I search how to ride a motorcycle. Start watching videos on that. I don't remember the first one I actually watched, but oh, and I did have previous, I mean, 2 of my cars before getting into motorcycles were manual, so I already had the concept of operating a manual vehicle down, which I think helped a lot, kind of sped up the process. But yeah, search how to ride a motorcycle on YouTube, find a bunch of videos, start watching a lot of Dan the Fireman, which honestly I think was great, especially for somebody just getting into it, just kind of beating it into your head what to look out for, different situations you're going to come across, just kind of overall, you know, just being safe on a bike. So I'm watching all these videos on YouTube, and I'm like, all right, well, I think I can figure this out. Those middle of winter, pull the bike out into my street, and I'm just playing with the clutch, just learning the clutch, the engage point, how to move it, you know, just kind of practicing little by little. It starts to get a little bit warmer in winter. I'm like, all right, I think I can manage taking it on the road. So I get the thing out, make it through my neighborhood okay. I'm like, all right, let's hop on the road. Hop on the road, take it to a parking lot where I just start practicing tight turns, you know, big figure eights, trying to turn them into small figure eights. You know, just going little by little. And the first, yeah, I mean, the first probably 5 rides I ever did was just riding to a parking lot for me for practice my motorcycle skills. And then from there, yeah, I just kept progressing little by little. Remember that one of my buddies did actually have a Harley, so I hit him up. I was like, yeah, let's go ride. He kind of helped direct me a little bit as well, which was helpful. And yeah, that was pretty much it. That's learning to ride a motorcycle. So I did it on the bobber. That was my very first bike. I'm happy I actually got the bobber as the first bike, because one, it was very comfortable to learn on. The thing was super low to the ground, so you didn't feel like this thing. I'm super high up. I'm glad I didn't start on something like this, that's for sure. But yeah, it was very confidence inspiring. It was low, it was solid, longer wheelbase, super stable. Just all around good bike to start with. Plus, it actually had a decent amount of power. So even as it got better, and I was like, alright, I want to go a little bit faster, have a little more fun. I mean, that bike was fun. It had definitely had some pull. That thing moved. But then fast forward another year, for my first year with the bobber, one of my buddies that I worked with had a R6. I'm like, oh, that was my dream bike, you know, can I borrow it? So I borrow my buddy's R6 and just absolutely fall in love. Just brings me right back to where I was as a kid, just dreaming about having that bike, riding that bike. And I'm just like, oh, this is it, you know, I gotta go back to a sport bike. So I sell the bobber, and I'm back in the market for an R6. Same thing. I'm like, oh, prices are even crazier now. Like, I'm not getting an R6. People are, this is, you know, right after COVID. People are literally selling the thing for way more than it was worth when it was brand new, and it was just, pricing was insane. Or you could get one that was super clapped out, which I was not about to do. So I'm like, well, if I'm gonna pay this much, like, maybe just get an R1. These things got tons of electronics, yada yada yada. Come on, guys. So I started looking for R1. Don't really find any in stock anywhere local. What I do find is an R1M, and I'm like, oh, what's this? Start looking into it. Wasn't super sold actually on the color scheme of this thing. First time seeing it online, I was like, I don't know. I go to this little dealership, a tiny little mom and pop dealership that was local. Actually, they had this bike. We go take a look at it and just absolutely fall in love with it. I'm like, all right, this is the bike. All right, pulling up to this gas station here. Meet up with my buddy. Give me a second, I'll be right back with you guys. What up?
Is that a new camera?
No, same camera, but I finally put a mount on this helmet.
Oh.
Before, the mount was only on the Ruroc. The only thing is now I gotta stick my finger in here to try to open the mask. There it is. What's good, man? How's she running?
Oh man, finally back.
Hasn't blown up yet.
Not yet. I put it through some tests already.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
Giving her the hard break-in.
Pretty much.
Let's get that cold start, or that warm start. Ooh. Yeah, get back to the story. So yeah, I find the R1M, this little dealership, like probably like 40 minutes from where I live. Go check it out. Just fall in love with the bike. Then of course start researching that. And I'm like, oh, you know, just turn the power modes down, whatever, while I'm getting used to the bike, which I kind of did. And yeah, and here we are. I'm sitting on an R1M. So kind of a crazy progression going from, you know, never riding a bike to having my first bike delivered, learning to ride from YouTube, trying out an R6, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, and then just hopping to an R1M. I was used to a lot of torque from the bobber, so moving to this, you know, the torque wasn't a big surprise. Obviously the top end is just like nothing else, but so yeah, kind of a crazy transition, but it really depends on the person. Things like this always came natural to me, so I knew, I mean, I had the faith in myself that I could handle the R1 and be responsible with it. I mean, that was the biggest thing, you know, if you're like, if you have no self-control and you know it, that hop from a bobber straight to an R1M would probably not be a good idea, because this thing really can't get you into trouble quickly. And before you even, I mean, this thing is just, it's just hyper fast. Definitely glad I didn't start on something like this too. Well, I think it would have been fine, just where I was mentally, maturity-wise too, but I was more confident learning to do tight maneuvers and things like that on the bobber than I think I would have been, you know, even the R6 or something like that. But yeah, I do not regret my decision at all to make the leap. I mean, this bike honestly will always be better than me. be really like 0.05% of a rider to take this thing to its limits, or find this thing's limits. But yeah, it's been about half a year now on the R1M, about 4,000 miles so far. I've loved every mile. Here we are. Ooh, lots of gravel. What we got here? Some big bagger. Ooh, I think it's one of the new Sportsters. It's a cool bike. I think it's a Sportster, right? Yeah. These were kind of interesting, actually. These came out not long after I got the Indian, the bobber. Kind of a similar bike. This thing's sweet though. Two Brothers Racing. That's a cool looking bike. Alright, catch back up with you guys. Get to riding.